All right. All right, thank you for that. I don't know how many conferences I've been to where you ever sat at a table with somebody you don't know and you're just trying to figure out who they are and where they're with and hoping that something on their paper is going to tell you who they are. So it's really good for you to know who you're with if you have any new folks at your table that aren't with your organization. And the reason that's important is because today's event is not about just a bunch of people speaking and you listening. Today's a collaborative event. You'll hear more about that from our director. You'll hear a lot about that from the governor. And you'll hear about that from the panelists and the facilitators who talk about the importance of the interaction and learning from each other. So today is a full day of activities. So if you look at your program guide, everybody should have grabbed one of these. If you didn't, there are more on the back table and in the back. You can grab one. This tells you everything that we're doing for today. It includes, we're going to have 2 panels this morning, and they will go back to back. And then lunch is included. So lunch today is sponsored by the League of Cities and California State Association of Counties, and their leaders will be here. They are here, and they'll be talking and introducing themselves at the beginning of lunch. So your lunch is included. The other thing is, a little bit of the paperwork is, you might also be aware that because it's sponsored by them, it could be reportable for you on whatever forms you use. So just be aware of that it is sponsored by the League and CSAC. So looking at your program guide, as we talked about, there's the 2 panel discussions this morning, and we'll be introducing them. And then Brian is going to talk about the breakout sessions this afternoon, which are going to be taking a very interactive format. And I think your participation in those will be extremely productive because it will be the basis for a lot of the considerations and changes and maybe additions to policies and procedures and just the way the state does business and others you may do business based on the interaction from that. So Brian?
Yeah, so after lunch, we'll go into the breakout sessions, and there are 3 of them. What we're going to do is do all 3 of them, take a quick break, and then wash, rinse, and repeat. So you'll, in essence, get to choose 2 of the 3 breakout sessions that you want to go to. The first time you can choose one, and then of the 3, you can do a second one. The 3 breakout sessions, the first one is Enhancing Emergency Management Capacity and Individual Preparedness. And again, all of these are in your program. That session will actually be in my right, your left half of the room. We'll just stay in this area. The second session, or the second track, is Strategies and Proprietizing for Risk Reduction. That will be in the far, my left, your right half of the room. We'll put a wall up and then break these off into 2. And then the third session will be upstairs. We are basically below ground right now, so the third session will be on the 2nd floor, up 2 flights of stairs, and it'll be Understanding Disaster Recovery, and that's called the Tofanelli Room. All of the rooms are clearly marked with signage. Again, you'll get to choose 2 of the 3 sessions that you want to go to after lunch today.
Great. Those are going to be, it'll be really interesting to see how those pan out as far as the discussion that goes on in those. And during this morning's panel discussions, there'll be more explanation about how to interact with that, but there's some cards on your table, so if you have any thoughts about the topics that you see for the 2 panels, you can start jotting those down now, and the folks, our team will be a part of that. Speaking of that, could I get the team that put this conference together to stand up for me, please? Helen Lopez and your team. I just want to give them a round of applause. As many of you know, these conferences can be quite a lot of work to put together, and they did a great job, and thus we have a lot of great participants as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our Director of the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, Mark Ghilarducci.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and so absolutely fantastic to see you all here today. I know many of you traveled far, and we're very, very, very appreciative of you taking out the time for this important day to spend together to learn and share. Joining up on the stage with me is, I want to introduce to you your state public safety leadership team. So in case you have not ever met all of us, although we've swooped into a majority of your jurisdictions over the last few years, I wanted to make sure that you know who we are and that this is the team that that works very, very, very hard to ensure that we're meeting the need to support you in your communities during disaster. So to my far right is Commissioner Warren Stanley, the Commissioner of the California Highway Patrol. Next to him is Adjutant General Dave Baldwin, the Adjutant General of the California National Guard. And directly behind me is Tom Porter, Chief Tom Porter, the Director of the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE. Collectively, we are constantly in a collaborative mode. We are constantly working together to ensure that we can respond very rapidly to whatever's necessary to support you and to support the communities, and then collectively work to recover very rapidly from events that that occur in our state. And so I just want to deeply show my deep appreciation for these gentlemen behind me. Could not do it without them, and it is truly a one team, one fight here together. So I want to take a minute before we get going and just kind of talk a little bit about why we're here. Why we're here. You've all come today to learn and hear Governor Newsom's interest and intent to increase the level of knowledge to build capacity in our emergency management constructs at all levels of government, to be able to deal with the things that are coming at us, to build resiliency in our communities, is the intent of today. We want to learn and we want to understand. We want to share best practices, and we want to raise the level of knowledge because there is a lot of misinformation out there about emergency management. Really, emergency management is a whole of community. It's not police or sheriff or fire or government exclusively. It's public, private, non-governmental, faith-based, and all the other things I just mentioned. It's all of us coming together in a collaborative, coordinated fashion to not only be able to prepare for and understand the risks and threats we have in a community, but to work together to buy that risk down, which then helps us become a more resilient community, a more resilient state to be able to withstand the various disasters that we face. And let's face it, we have faced some significant disasters. Since 2013, we have had everything in California. I mean, we've had a history of disasters in California, but since 2013, we've had earthquake in Napa, floods that have impacted almost every county in the state, from very extreme storms and what they call atmospheric rivers, multiple atmospheric rivers, resulting in record rainfall and record snowpack. We've endured a 6-year drought. We've had, obviously, multiple wildfires, which I'll talk again about in a minute. We've had the largest gas leak in the nation's history in Aliso Canyon. We had a massive oil spill off the Santa Barbara coast, the Refugio oil spill. We had a terrorist attack in San Bernardino. We've had active shooter situations. We had a spillway that collapsed in Oroville. Since 2013, we've had hundreds of states of emergency, resulting in billions of dollars in California Disaster Assistance Act funding to communities. That's infrastructure damage. But more importantly, since 2013, we've had 16 presidentially declared disasters. Since leading up to 2013, we had not had a presidentially declared disaster since 2008. So from 13 to 19, we've had 16. It's not easy to get a presidentially declared disaster in California. You have to have a minimum of about $58 million in infrastructure destroyed, as well as a whole number of other factors that come into to come into consideration before the White House will deem that you are qualified or eligible for federal disaster assistance. So you could imagine the kinds of events that we've seen, the scope, the size, the scale, the character, and the complexity of these events over the course of the last 7 years. And all of you, and if not all of you, most of you in your jurisdictions have experienced and had to deal with and had to manage not only the response, but the recovery from these events. We in California are lucky. We do have a standardized emergency management system. That is a critical aspect of building a capacity and an understanding of making sure that our system, which really is the best in the world, right? Our mutual aid systems, our fire, our law enforcement, our emergency management, our emergency medical, you name it, we can move resources really well. We can assign resources and get them to the scene, and we can support each other in a one team, one fight effort. As we roll into our recovery, that's a little more difficult. Recovery from these disasters is really the Achilles heel of where we are as a state. It's what costs us the most. It's what impacts our communities the most. And we've seen time and time again, and let's just take 17 and 18 alone. And while I've talked about all of the last 7 years, 2017 and 2018 were unbelievable years. In 2017 and 18, we had, of course, catastrophic wildfires. Again, climate-driven extreme weather events. Coming out of 6 years of drought, we ended up having actually fires in 2015 in the Lake Fire and Lake and the Butte Fire in Calaveras. And then we rolled into a multiple series of fire after fire. In fact, Lake County, I know you're here. I think there's only like 20% of the county that hasn't burned yet. And so between 17 and 18, though, we lost almost 38,000 homes and businesses in California. Destroyed. And unfortunately, 300 fatalities. And it wasn't just the fires that did it. We then saw cascading secondary impacts like the catastrophic mud flows in Montecito that destroyed another several hundred homes and cost almost 20 additional lives. This is all a time when we collectively need to come together. Local, state, federal, private sector, non-governmental, faith-based. We need to come together. Coming together builds resiliency. And what is resiliency? Resiliency is building capacity in your communities. As elected leaders, as appointed leaders, as people who are running your organization, it's important to understand what is it that you need to build that capacity to withstand the kinds of events that you're seeing. You cannot wait until the event itself to be ready to respond. This takes thought, this takes planning, this takes mitigation, this takes funding, and it takes leadership. Now, we collectively travel all around the state. We come into every one of your jurisdictions. We see disaster after disaster. And arguably, some counties do it good. Some counties are working at it. But the key thing is we want to raise the bar. The governor's intent is to raise the bar making sure that emergency management and the principles of resiliency are built into all of our communities. That you all think about this first in your planning effort, in your land use planning effort, not last. That as you move forward as a community and you grow and you thrive, you think that you can pay a little now or a heck of a lot later. And when I say heck of a lot, I'm talking between 17 and 18, we're like at $30 billion in losses, right? And it's being questioned. The national level, the state level, the cost of these disasters is unprecedented. And it's not just here in California. Weather-related extreme events are driving disasters throughout the country. And in fact, our friends at FEMA have told me that they have pushed out more disaster recovery money in the last 7 years than they have in the entire 30-year history of FEMA. These are true facts that we're facing. And all of us coming together, all of you sitting in the room, all of us up here at the state level, led by the governor, this is what today's about. Coming together, talking about some of these things. You're going to hear some great stories, some great best practices, but all of them driven out of actual experiences. What worked, what didn't. And I really implore you that when you leave today, you're leaving with an idea about where is my emergency management program? How resilient is my jurisdiction? What is it? Is it located in the right place? Have we resourced it correctly? Am I putting enough attention into it? Have I engaged my community and my business roundtable enough to make them part of the solution? And we have big counties and small counties. My office and my colleagues behind me we are here for all counties. If you need help, let us know. We will support you. If you don't need help, that's fine. Call us anyway. We'd like to come down and have a cup of coffee with you. We're here, one team, one fight, moving forward. So I wish you a great day today. I hope it's interactive and collaborative. The idea is that we share, we talk, we learn, and we know we're going to do more of these, and you're going to see more of us. Because this is the great state of California. Well, we, by the way, as many disasters as we face, no one does it better with regards to responding and dealing with these disasters than California. And we learn every day. And as we learn, we get better. This summit, I want to just say something quickly about Governor Newsom. You know, his second day in office, his full second day in office, he spent at OES. He spent learning and understanding about what it is we need to do to address the issue of our capacity, our resiliency, our ability to respond and recover. But it's not like he just turned the light switch on. As lieutenant governor, he was in the state operations center all the time. In fact, many of the times that Governor Brown was out of the state, he was the acting governor and was driving many of the disaster response and recovery operations. So he's no stranger to this. It's not his first rodeo. But he did immediately talk about building a summit, an ability for all of us to come together, to learn and to share. We're lucky to have him. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you our governor, the state of California, Governor Newsom.
Thank you, Mark. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you. This is great. It's wonderful to see everybody up here. We didn't know how this would come off. This was an idea, as Mark suggested, a few months back, out of frustration, exacerbation, desperation, a need to get ahead, a need to get our heads on straight, a need to prepare a need to recognize and reconcile that we just can't take this anymore, that the state can't take 2018 again, can't do 2017, 2015 again. 16,600 fires in 2017 and 2018. 139 lives lost, 2.8 million acres destroyed. Air quality issues, health, consequences of rolling backwards, not moving forward on our greenhouse gas goals. Look down the line, the politics of this with an administration, the frustration and concern around reimbursement. Everything about this, we can't take it anymore. You can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. And so the whole purpose of this is sort of set the table, set a different tone and tenor of accountability, responsibility, and resolve. Accountability because folks are looking for us to lead, take care of them, make sure they're protected and safe. It's a foundational principle that defines everything else. You can't talk about everything else unless we set the table on public safety. And so I want to just thank you for what you've done to get here, your leaders in your own right, what you're committed to doing in terms of expressing and sharing today, your history, your experiences, your willingness to keep an open mind, not be ideological in terms of what you're doing and how you're approaching things, and your willingness to get to know one another. Because at the end of the day, all those fancy plans, all those binders, all those reports and consultants we hire, nothing substitutes for personal relationships. Nothing substitutes for getting someone's, text or phone number, or just getting to know someone and knowing that they're going to respond to you or know that they're available to you. And so more important perhaps than anything else, this is about relationship building. And it's about the beginning of a process that we hope continues to build and relationships that continue to evolve over the course not just of today, but the next few years. I want to just briefly, though, mention a few things. There are 971 million reasons we're in better position this year than last year. That's the increase, the incremental increase in this year's budget, if it's approved, and we are working hard as I speak. In fact, Friday is our sort of tentative draft deadline for the budget to get this budget approved. $50 million that we were able to appropriate early in the process for emergency planning communications to allow you peer-to-peer to begin to work with your community emergency response teams, with folks like Listos and others to begin to adapt and address some localized strategy in terms of your communication strategies. The commitment that we have to finally get to the 20th century, not just the 21st, and getting you out of that analog system, 911, to a digitized system, finally some down payments on that. That's an embarrassment that I'm saying that in 2019. But finally, we're going to make some real progress on our 911 upgrades in this year's budget. Interoperability more broadly, providing more resources in that space, pre-positioning, historic investments, still not where we need to be, and I get that, but more investments on pre-positioning than we've seen in the past, engines and personnel. We are outfitting for those that, need to see things, to believe things, and I hear that every time we're at a scene. People want to see something in the sky. They want to know something's being done. Well, finally, we're outfitting those C-130s and finally upgrading, I think, $109 million to upgrade our old Hueys. So we'll have some Black Hawk helicopters that actually can fly at night that are also going to be outfitted with the latest modern suppression technology and technology that ultimately do justice to the complexity of our fire and fire season. The issues around LIDAR, the issues related to satellite technology, we finally got a breakthrough with the Pentagon without getting too much in the details of that, probably getting kicked virtually behind me for even acknowledging that, but finally making some progress as it relates to those relationships. The issues, obviously, on hardening, issues related to thinning and fuels management, scientifically based fuels reduction, strategies to focus on socioeconomics. We haven't focused on that as much in the past. That was reflected in that executive order, those 35 high-profile, or at least targeted and higher-profile projects that were part of the renewed efforts to be a little bit more targeted in terms of addressing the most at-need communities that are most at risk. And we learned that, obviously, in Butte and elsewhere, folks that don't have the mobility opportunities that many of us take for granted, people that don't have the ability to afford a vehicle, people that are in mobile home parks, people that are struggling based on their age or infirmity to make sure that they have adequate resources, and that we are making sure that we're creating fuel breaks and fire breaks and evacuation plans as a priority in those communities. Those, by the way, 35 high-profile projects are already underway. Some, I think, Mark, we had, Tom, one of those projects was on the docket for 10 years from now. Yeah. And we were able to get that project moving and impacting 200-plus communities. You know, we worked with the environmental community. It wasn't easy, but to move some of the CEQA issues forward, but we thought that was the right thing to do, and I want to thank the environmental community. It wasn't an easy thing for folks to accept, but they were willing to accept an emergency declaration before an emergency so that we can move those projects forward, bring them to the forefront as opposed to wait for an emergency declaration after a disaster occurred. More focus, more intentionality, a more aggressive and collaborative and coordinated response, candidly, than we've seen in the past. More resources and a more resourceful mindset in this space. And it's not just around wildfires, it's also around earthquakes. I'm a fifth-generation San Franciscan. And thank you to the one voice in the room. But, you can't grow up in the city without, thinking every day about where you're driving or, and where you're standing and, whether or not you're prepared. We've got 100% of the money now for that early warning system. We said that last year. Turns out it wasn't the case. This year we finally do have the money for that earthquake early warning system. 100% of the money now made available for that. And we'll start getting that technology deployed across the state. I appreciate some of the work that's been done in some parts of the state, but at scale, we'll get that technology. Then we have to figure out a way to fund it at an operational level into the future, but we're committed to that as well. It's all around mutual aid. It's all around recognizing that there is no jurisdiction when it comes to emergency response, emergency preparedness, emergency planning. Resiliency, it's in our DNA. If it's not, you haven't been paying attention. One thing is self-evident, and I know we have folks at all political stripes, and I just want to make a point about that. Thank each and every one of you, to every right-wing conservative and left-wing Democrat, thank you for giving a damn about your community, about your family, about your neighbors. Thank you for the work you do. This is not a political space, and we're going to be there for you. You didn't have to vote for the folks in the Capitol. You could be out protesting us. We care about you. We're going to have your back. We're going to take care of your constituents. And I just want to make that point. There is no politics in this space. But there's also a point of principle and pride as well in this state in particular, that I think we are moving past some of these stale ideological debates. And I think we're also recognizing that, you may call it global warming, you may call it climate change, but something ain't right. The hots are getting hotter. The wets are getting a lot wetter. The dries are getting a lot drier. And that acuity requires a different response and a different approach. I remember Rob Watson, an old friend of mine, big environmentalist, said, Mother Nature is nothing more than chemistry, biology, and physics. She bats last, and she bats 1,000. And it's a way of thinking about the world we're living in. And I think we need to be prepared for the worst. I think we experienced the worst, but I don't know that we have. And so that requires a different level of sophistication, a different level of collaboration. And forgive me, I don't want to continue, but I want to just make this point that we are grateful and we admire you. We want to thank you for being here. And I want to just thank, I noticed a lot of guys behind me. I got to think about that. But these 4 folks, I don't know. By the way, 73% of my administration are women, except here, obviously. But I just want to acknowledge them. That Tom's an expert in forests. It's his life's passion and purpose, his understanding and nuance of vegetation. I mean, all these issues, this is what he does. And I'm so proud that he's in this position running CAL FIRE. I mean, Stanley, even if we didn't want to get to know each other, my gosh, the amount of time we've had to spend together. Commissioner's just been doing an incredible job over the last few years, and so many just tragic moments that we've spent together, but being there for families and being there for loved ones, I just want to applaud him and his team. To the general, we got the best damn National Guard in the United States of America. No one comes close, and I just want to thank him for his incredible leadership, and no one could substitute for Mark and his experience, his leadership. I remember we were there meeting in Washington, D.C., and, I was like being with the Kardashians or something. All those FEMA folks wanting to get, photographs and selfies. He's a national brand, and I want to just thank Mark for your leadership as well. And if he's not embarrassed, he should be, but he's done a great job. And to CSAC and to the League of Cities, thank you to the leadership. You guys really stepped up, and I'm really grateful to you for, getting this and being willing to organize this on pretty short notice. You guys have been, incredible partners, and we can't do this without you. And I'll just close by saying this. If you don't like the way the world looks when you're standing up, stand on your head and go local, because remarkable things are happening at the local level. And I just want to acknowledge that, because all of you are demonstrably proving that. So, there's not a problem in this space that hasn't been solved by one of you in this room. The question is how we can scale your example, how we can spread your example, how we can share your example. That's the spirit of this day, and that's the spirit that defines this moment. People are counting on us. Literally, people's lives are on the line. And I want to thank you for putting yourselves out there and holding yourselves to this higher level of accountability. Enjoy the day, and let this begin a process of collaboration, the likes of which this state has never experienced in its history. Thank you all very, very much.